Good morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. I'm Natalie and today we are going to be doing a little bit of work with cropping, framing and mounting. So you are going to need a ScanNCut for this process. If you have another cutter, you will have to adapt what I do today to your machine. So first of all, don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching. And I will say hello and answer any questions that you may want to ask. There is no such thing as a stupid question, so if you're unsure about something and just want to need a little bit of extra help, please ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Okay, so today I'm going to be working with the phenomenally fab collection from Chocolate Baroque. Easy for me to say, not. And we're going to be working with large stamps. So this morning is all about how we come up with large stamps with our ScanNCut. So good morning, Tracy. And I think maybe having a little bit of a delay on Facebook, but hopefully it'll sort itself out. So first of all, you need to decide whether you're going to have your image already coloured or if you just want to work with black and white. Now, how would you decide between the two? So I have two images here that I've already coloured, and I would do it this way round if I'm going to either frame it as a whole or mount it as a whole piece. If I'm going to crop into it and use it on one project, so that the colour is consistent. Yeah, Chocolate Baroque stamps. Or if you are doing a set, so it might be that you are doing a gift card set, in which case colour your image first and you'll keep that same colour theme going through. It is much more difficult to try and match colours between separate sections. So if you do it all as one and then crop into it. Now, on the other hand, if you want to create something where you know for a fact that you want to keep sections distinct, then do this step in black and white first. So I've stamped all four of the big images just so I've got plenty to play with. So if there is one in particular you would like to see, do let me know. And thank you, Tracy. Yes, they are looking an awful lot better than they were. So thank goodness for that. And they're still a little bit sore, just like down the edges and stuff. And I think that's where it tends to rub on my desk. So we have a lovely landscape image where we've got the train and the stag. So if you say train and stag, I know you're referring to this one. We have floral paraphernalia. And we have another landscape with the house and the lake. And we have phenomenal butterfly. Can you guess which is my favourite? Okay. So we can work with any of those, and I'm going to try not pick my favourite to start with. You just let me know which you would like me to show. And good morning to whoever's commenting is Planner Craft, it's not me. I'm going to take a guess and say it's Deb. I could be wrong. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Nobody get back to me as to which they'd like to see. So let's start with, as I'm going to start with cropping, let's start with a vertical one, and yeah, I'm going to go for the butterflies. You knew I would. So I'm currently using, here's you, Linda. A slightly larger mat than you would usually see me use. So change it while I was doing samples, because I was working on something a bit big. So I'm going to stick down our piece first. Now it could be that we're going to scan this and then cut from something else, but for starters, let's just look at actually cutting into our scanned image. Now one thing I will say is, because this is an 18-inch mat, when I do my background scan, it's going to pretend that it's 24 and kick it out back. That's okay, we can just push it back in and it finds out where it is. So don't worry about that. And we can pop that in. And if the door goes at any point during today's live, then I will have to dash off. But I'll just put a holding screen up and I will be back as soon as possible. So let's change view. So let's go close cam. And I can see what I'm doing on screen. So first of all, load your mat. Haven't yet had a chance to get the ring light for the ScanNCut so you can see the buttons, but I'm sure you know where the buttons are. Okay, so you might be tempted to think, okay, I'm scanning, so I'm going to go to scan. That isn't what we want to do. So even though I know I'm going to divide it up into 3, the actual scan itself isn't going to inform that shape. So therefore we're going to go to pattern and choose our shape first. And it could be that we go for a plain square. It could be that we go into a circle. It could even be that we do a bunch of hexagons. The point is that you're going to pick one. So let's say nice rounded corner one. And we're going to ignore our size settings for now, and we're just going to add it to our mat. So just one of them. Okay. Now at the moment you can see that I've got this bit here. And what that actually is where I've just changed my cutting area. So because we want to make sure that we have the maximum amount, we're just going to go in here and we're going to drag that down to 12 by 12. So even though it's set to 12 by 12, it's still going to try and scan the whole mat. Okay, so with our shape on the mat, we can then do a background scan, and you're going to want to catch. Okay. So there's our scan. So we can now move our shape over the first part of our image, and we're going to go to edit, object edit, and into size. And then at this point we can start to think about how big of a square we need to actually fit 3 in. So if we're doing like a triptych, is what I'm thinking. So if you saw on the show, there was a sample that said wings in big writing. That was me doing something pretty similar to this. So one of the things you want to be aware of is spacing of other focal elements in that stamp. So you can see the two here are quite close together. So what I found myself doing is, rather than focusing on this top image, is actually going and working out this separation here and here. So let's go to this one here first. And it needs to go a little bit bigger, just a little. I'm going to go OK, and I'm just going to give that a little nudge. we can go OK at that. We can go back to Object Edit and to our icon with a little plus symbol, and then we can multiply that up so that we have 3. So there's our 3 squares. So next we can pop in this one, and up here. So straight away we've got a bit of an issue. So number one is, if we put these on a straight line, we're going to crop into our butterfly here, and we're also going to have an overlapping shape just here. So how can we fix that out? So we're going to go OK. First of all, let's see if we can work out our spacing. So this one we're going to nudge slightly more this way. OK. We can then go and select all. OK. We're going to go into move, and then up at the top we've got our align button, so we can do that. And we have 2 options down the bottom that are distribute space. So that's where it takes the space between shapes and makes it equal, like so. So it's going to do a big jump. And we now know that those 2 shapes are pretty close to one another. Now obviously if you are going to put these 3 squares vertically on a frame, then you are going to want to have them so that they're level, so that the image flows through correctly. If you are going to go crossways, it doesn't matter as much. So what I did was I just literally took this one, and we can nudge that one down so that our butterfly is in there. That one we can nudge to a point where we're happy that our image is centered, and this one you can also see our butterfly is popping off that edge, so we can take that down again. Okay, so at this point we can go OK if you want to, or if you want to crop into that further, we can do. So for instance, you might want to put another break in that section there, in which that you can put your title, like I did with the wings. You might decide that you want to put in some kind of decorative border. So it's always something to consider, whether you actually want all of those pieces to stay whole, or if you want to crop into them again. So I'm just going to nudge that down very slightly. Let's go OK, 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 and we can see that we've got our 3 squares. Because these are basic shapes, we can pop in our standard auto blade, and I'm going to pop my pressure back down just a little and see if it behaves. The other day it was not playing ball for me, so we'll see how it goes. I think it's getting to that point where it finally needs a new blade. So morning Louise, if you missed the beginning, I'm working with the Chocolate Baroque normally fabric collection. Let's flick that back overhead so you can see these pieces as I take them off. So we have our first butterfly, our second butterfly, and our third and fourth, like so. So if you're doing it that way round, it doesn't matter if those squares aren't quite level. If you want to go more like this, then you are going to want to have them a bit more level. Okay. Trick is, if you think that you're going to be slightly off, leave a bit of a gap, and the eye will fill in the blank, especially with something where you've got like a wiggly line like this, and it's going to look like you got it spot on even if you haven't. There you go, trick of the trade. So there's our first project. Now let's pick another one. So this time I'm going to work with one of these lovely landscape large border stamps. So there's lots we can do with this, whether we cut into it like we did with butterflies, or if we want to frame it. So I thought it'd be really good to show you some framing. So you have two options when you want to actually finish off an image that isn't going to be a card. You have the option of framing it, where you actually put something over the top, or you have the option of mounting it like a matten layer. So I wanted to show you working in both kind of directions so that you can see where we're going. So first of all, mounting is the easier one of the two, so I will show you that first. So I'm going to go home and reset. Let's go back to this one. We'll go OK to delete everything. And then we are going to go to Pattern, Basic Shapes, and you want a long thin rectangle. So that one will do. Again, we'll ignore the size and we'll go Set. Okay. We're now going to do another background scan. Okay, so now we can see our stamped image, and we can start to get, okay, which section of this do we want, how much of a border do we want to allow. Now what I would say is, as we're mounting, you want to not go so far as to go out of your cut area if you then offset outwards. So focus on your inner section of your image, so this section here, because we're going to be cropping off here and here. Now if it's essential that you keep these end pieces, rotate the shape on your mat and treat the mat as a full 12 by 24. So rather than having the cut areas of 12 by 12, have it as a 12 by 24. Move it down so that you have that inch gap at the top that I usually do with when we're doing things like ScanNCut data. And then you're allowing yourself the ability to move outside of that when we come to do the next layer. So we're going to bring down our rectangle and we're going to move it to the middle. That's because when we resize our rectangle, it's going to resize from that centre point outwards. Okay. So we're going to go to Edit, Object Edit, Resize. Now we can see that we need a much longer rectangle than we do tall, and the easiest way to do that is, first of all, we're going to get our height right. So let's get our height a bit taller, and while we're doing that in proportion, our width is going to be automatically going up for a little bit. This means we're going to push less buttons by doing it this way. up slightly so that we've got that there. We're then going to press the ratio button, which is this one just here with the 2 sets of arrows, and we're going to make sure that that is blue. That means that we can alter the height and width independently. So we're going to put that width up, and that's going to go and extend to the sides of our image. Now, because I want to be able to show you a few different options for matte and layers, I'm not going to go out too far. You could still push this further if you wanted to, but let's start there. Now, if you got to that point and you're thinking, okay, I just need a little bit extra of a border, untick the ratio like I've just done there and just nudge that height up slightly, and it's going to expand in proportion. So there we go. That's the one way of doing it. Okay. And we can cut that out. So again, I'm going to use the standard auto blade. We're going to go okay, okay, okay. I'm going to go to cut. Let that cut. Okay, so now we're going to take that off the mat. Like so. I use all my scrap bits of card as well. So nothing's wasted. Let's quickly pop on overhead so you can see there's my image. So it's going edge to edge, and now we're going to create a mat for that. So what we want to do is have something that extends an even amount all the way around. Show you how to do it. So we're going to go okay because we've finished cutting and we know that we've taken it off the mat. We're going to go back, so not home, back. That's really important because then we've still got this same shape on our mat, because our next cut is going to be based on it. So we're going to go to edit, and it's going to highlight our shape in red. We're going to go to object edit, and we're going to go to offset, and we can choose any amount of positive offset that you want to. So the important thing is that it's positive. That means that the offset is going outwards from where the line is. And we can take it up a fair bit. So, like so. Hopefully you can see that. Let's see if I can just get you a little bit closer. And just angle you around a bit. There we go. So you've now got like 2 lines. You've got the centre line, which is currently highlighted in green, and you've got the outer offset line, which is the one it's adding. So when we go OK, you're going to see that centre green line goes back to being red, saying that I'm still the currently selected shape. Now this is really important. If you are doing something with lots of offsets, then it's important to remember that when you go back out of that panel, it's going back to the shape that you were offsetting and not the new offset shape. So then we can go OK, and we can delete our original so that our outside frame is still there. All well and good. So at this point we can pick a colour. Just trying to pick something that's going to go with the theme. So let's go for a nice earthy red. I'm going to pop that onto my mat. Like so. Now, obviously our shape at the moment is still aligned to to the scan that was on the mat. But obviously at this point we don't need it to be aligned there. So we can save ourselves some material and we can move it up to the corner. So right up against that cutting edge. We can go OK. And if you find that scan distracting, you can turn it off so that you can remember that that's not what's on your mat. But when you're working with just a plain colour for the next layer, it's not too important. So we can go, please select, cut, and let it go. So when you're taking your layers off your mat, always try to use a metal spatula just so that you don't damage the corners. And there's our first layer. Like so. And we can repeat that with another colour. So this time, let's go for a brown. Let's see if there's going to be enough of a difference there. And it's going to be a bit close for screen. So, we've got something a little lighter. Let's try that one. Yeah, that would look better. So let's just pop that on overhead so you can see. So we're going to go for a lighter brown to our darker red. Line that up at the top of your mat again. Press it down well, especially if you've got any cut sections. And let's flick back. So again we're going to go OK and back, and now we've got the shape there. We're going to bring it back to the middle, or at least the middle between here and here. We can go into Edit, Object Edit, and Offset again. So this time we can offset a bit more, just make a bit more of a feature of it, like so. We'll go OK, OK, and we can delete the original. Move it back up to that top corner. OK, OK, and we go to cut. So again, remove the waste and then we can get to our layer underneath. And back overhead. So now we have our layers perfectly spaced. With an equal border all the way around for each layer. So then we can apply adhesive and go from there. So there's that one. Now to go the other way. So let's say we want to frame instead of mounting, which is where we put our border on top. So first of all, you are going to scan your stamp, but we aren't going to cut this sheet yet. So pop that onto your mat. And this time actually I'm going to go vertically. Go back to the machine. We're going to go OK, home to reset, and OK, start fresh. So in my settings, I'm going to change my cut area to 12 by 24. Even though I'm only working on a 12 by 18 mat. We can go OK, and OK again. We're still going to go to pattern, and we're still going to put a shape in. So given that I'm going to need a long rectangle, I'm going to put that one in like so, and just add it as is. We can then do our background scan. And there's our background scan. We're going to take our rectangle and move it towards the middle of our 12 by 12. So even though we've scanned it down further, just put it into the middle so we've got room to manoeuvre. We're going to go to Edit, Object Edit, Rotate. And we're going to rotate it 90 degrees, and it doesn't matter at this point whether you go clockwise or anti-clockwise, because it's just a rectangle. Okay, and now we can resize that rectangle to what we want to see visible on our frame. So we're going to go to resize, and we're going to make it bigger up to the point where we're happy with the height, so a little bit more. We can press our ratio button again. Now this is where it's going to be a bit of a weird one, because your brain is going to now think width because it's rotated around 90 degrees and it's not, it's the height. So we can take that a little bit bigger. Just bear in mind where this bottom edge is here, because we were going to want to move that up there slightly. So we can go OK at this point, and OK. We're going to go to move, and we're going to nudge that shape upwards, as well as sorting out where our image is sitting in the frame. Now if you haven't got your image quite square, then you can use the 1 degree rotation to fix that, but it is quite a blunt instrument, so you may find that you can't get it exactly true. So if you need to just give it a little wiggle on your mat, just do that and rescan. But for me that'll do. So I've got OK, like so. We are going to peel away our stamped image, and we're going to move that away from our mat, because now what we want to do is we want to create the frame that's going to sit around it. So I have a long piece of card here, and we're going to start off with that, and then we can go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the grid on my mat to help me position my card. I'm going up to the top edge, and I'm going to pop that like so. Now, there's me saying top edge. Don't mean top edge. What I mean is down 1 inch from the top edge. The important bit is, because we need that little bit to align. So this is how you get your aperture central. going to add another shape. We're going to pop in another long rectangle, and at this point we can set our size for our media. So remember that you've added that 1 inch at the top, so don't accidentally add that. We have a height of, and I'm going to change that straight away so it's going to go blue, because we're going to be turning this around as we're actually sizing instead of trying to rotate the shape, because it won't work. So our height is 15.75. So we're going to press and hold, because it's a long way for it to go. Okay, there's our height of our card. And we're then going to do our width. So our width is, let's say, slightly over 75, so yeah, let's go to 7. Oh, it's not quite 8. Down a bit. Let's say 8.5. Okay. And we're going to add that to our mat. And it's going to be annoying. If it ever does that to you, what you can do is you can typically take it a little bit smaller and increase it on your mat. So I'm just going to untick that because we know it's now in the right proportions. We can make that a little bit shorter. Come on, be nice. It's because there's already a shape on the mat. But once you're in, then you can actually position it over the top. There we go. So now we're going to increase that back up. So move it up here, not too close to the top, because we're going to want to resize it. We're going to go into Edit, Object Edit, and resize and pop that back up to 15.75 on that height. Not that big gun. Oh. Okay. So now we're going to go OK and OK. So we now have both shapes on our mat. We're going to go to our multi-select button, which is the one with the 3 red squares. We're going to select all, OK, move, align, then we're going to put them in the center. So these 2 buttons here. So we want it centered horizontally and vertically. So we then know our frame is going to have that aperture then in the middle. And then we can go OK. So that's going to give us our frame for our image. So what I would say is, at this point, because we now know that those 2 are aligned, if we go to Edit, and we're going to go to Multi-Edit, so that's selected, we're going to go to Object Edit and Group. Now we need to actually move it down, because we've got this 1 inch at the top. And if we go to Nudge, it's going to be a little bit easier for us to see. So I'm going to take that down, 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 down to that same 1 inch mark that we used on our first scan. Now, is this going to be absolutely perfect? Probably not. But it's going to be an awful lot closer than what we could get it to. I'm also going to want to move it this direction. so that we know that we are lined up this top right corner of our card, which we know we've lined up to the grid of our mat. Okay, all good so far. Don't go to cut yet. So we're going to go back to Object Edit and we're going to ungroup our frame. The reason we're going to do that is we don't want to send our blade around the outside of our card, because one, we could potentially damage the edge of the card if it's not quite spot on. Two, we could actually end up cutting through our mat, which you really don't want to do. So make sure that we then go OK. I'm going to tap off the edge, so not on either shape, so that we know that we're not moving anything. It's going to highlight one of the shapes in red. Now, so long as it's the outside shape, you can just go straight to bin. If it's highlighted the inside shape, just use your arrows here to move between the two. So I'm going to just delete that one, and that's going to leave my aperture behind. So we now know that that should be perfectly placed. Fingers crossed. We're going to go OK. OK. And cut. It's very quiet out there today. Okay, let's have a look. So this time our outer piece is the frame that we want to keep. So very carefully remove it from the mat. Be aware that it does have an aperture in it, so that when you're removing things from your mat, just take a little bit extra time, especially around the corners, so that we're not warping or distorting it. And we then have our frame. Okay, so white on white isn't going to look that fantastic. So what we really need to do is to create a little border inside that's going to have a bit more colour. So as we still have the shape on our mat, we can do that. Now, one thing to bear in mind before you go to this next step is quickly measure that centre aperture that you've taken out. So you make sure that you've got big enough card, because you want to have a shape that's going to be smaller than it to do the colour inside, but you're also going to want to go outside of it so you have somewhere to actually stick your tape. So that's going to fit on a 12 by 12, so I can use a 12 by 12. So I can use the same red again. Rotate it around the other way this time. Okay. So let's go back to the ScanNCut. We're going to go OK and back, because we still want to work with that same shape. Now we need to create two offsets from this base shape. We need to create one that's going to go inside, and we need to create one that's going to go outside. Now you may find it easier to actually change the measurements that you're actually going. So if you're measuring most stuff in inches, when it comes to doing lots of thin offsets, typically it's easier to hop over to millimetres just for those little fine adjustments. So I'm going to edit, object edit, and first of all, if I go to resize, go to settings, I can change to millimetres in there and just go OK. So don't change anything in terms of the size, it is literally just to get into the millimetres. We're going to go to offset, and firstly we're going to do that inside offset. So this is where we choose how much border we want, and because we want it to go inside, it needs to be a negative number. So what this actually means is you're going to see a border of, say, 3.5 mil at this point. That's going to be visible all the way around. I'm going to take it down just a little bit more so that we have a real pop of colour. So it can go down to 5. Okay. We're going to go OK, and that's going to apply that offset onto the mat, but it's not the one that's selected. We can go back to offset, and this is going to create a new offset. So we can take that outwards. And this is where you set your offset according to whatever adhesive you're using. So if you're using 7mm double-sided, set an offset that is slightly wider, so say 8mm, just to allow for a little bit of leeway. If you're using some mounting tape that you know is 10mm, go up to about 12mm, because mounting tape is quite unforgiving. It's like super duper double-sided. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger at 12. And we can go OK again, and that's going to do that offset there. Now if you wanted to at this point, and you want to get really fancy, you could actually draw that original shape. So you would just literally just turn it on the pen function. You don't want the fill, but you do want the outline, okay? So that's your option. You could draw it. If you wanted to create like a forward border, then you could use your foil quill to do that. But for something like this, where it's only a thin offset that you've got, we can just do away with that. So we'll go OK, and we'll go delete. OK. So that's going to give us our 2 offsets. We can then go OK, OK. Now, before I go too far, I just realised one thing. We're going to select all, and we're going to group. The reason I say that this time we're going to group it is because we're going to want to move it around. Because my card is up the other way, we are going to want to rotate it. So with it grouped, we can rotate 90 degrees, and that's going to fit in there like so. We can then move that up to the top and over to the left hand edge. Go OK, OK again, OK again, OK again, and we don't need to ungroup this time because we mean to cut both lines. And off we go. Okay, so now we can take the waste off our mat, remove our frame very carefully, very carefully, and then we can use that centre panel for something else. Okay, so assembly wise, you are still going to want to trim down your base piece. But I just thought it would be worth you seeing how it all looks together. So you can use that outside frame piece that we just used, so the outside cut line of this one, to actually trim this piece too. So, and let's position that roughly level. Then this frame will go over the top, and you've created yourself a nice mounted piece of artwork. So there you go. You've got cropping, framing and mounting all built into your machine, just with a little bit of careful planning. So there's the mounting, and finally we had the cropping. There we go. So, I hope you've had a good morning. It's been awfully quiet, so I take it you've all been concentrating really hard. If you would like me to show you anything else to do with the stamps, then please do request a video. I'm fairly open to video ideas. And I look forward to seeing you Tuesday at 11. So each day we are doing crafty challenges in the group. So the prompt goes up on the page, so that's at PlannerCraft on Facebook. But you can post what your response is to that challenge actually in the group. So that's ScanNCut and Papercraft courses, classes and workshops by PlannerCraft. So pop that in there. We had some lovely blue and yellow entries yesterday. Today's might be a bit of a further adaptation on that theme, so watch this space. So that should be going up in about 9 minutes. So take care for now and have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.